Hello everyone, I'm here for the first interview today. I'm here with Mr. Bruce Carter, who's a lecturer at BIM University. Bruce has taught me now for 3 years. We've learned lots of things together and he's been a very good teacher. And now I'm going to sit and speak to him about the music industry, in particular portfolio careers. So Bruce, to start us off, can you just tell us all how you got into the music industry and what age you maybe were?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I finished university in Sheffield. Back in those days, there wasn't places like BIM where you could do kind of music courses. So usually there was more traditional music courses, but there certainly wasn't kind of ones that serve like the pop industry or get into music in this way. And I came back to Manchester area after studying media studies at uni, and got in a band with some of my old uni mates who, while I'd been away, had been kind of busy working with a guy, Clint Boone, who was in Spiral Carpets. And Clint Boone was kind of a really good advocate of young musicians in Oldham, where I was from. And a couple of my mates had kind of played in his band. Some had done kind of backline stuff, so they'd learnt a lot, and I learnt a lot from their experiences being shared with me. And we were just all kind of at that age where you just come back from uni sort of age and determined to do well with our band. So we started rehearsing in Manchester with the intention to get a record deal, and we got one within took about 2 years of hard work, 18 months. We got like a major deal in the end with London Records, which was Warner Brothers, and this was from my band Nylon Pylon. But to get to that point, we literally got a rehearsal room in the Northern Quarter, and at that time there were only a few bars where the local music industry would go, and we kind of made ourselves acquaintances and friends with anyone that was in the music industry in Manchester. From journalists to people at publishing labels to...
So when was this? What time?
This was year 2000.
Okay, so like Oasis are around, and there's still a good feel about music scene in Manchester.
Yeah, well, everyone was really excited about Manchester at that period of time. It kind of had a good music heritage, which is, it still does, but it was still quite like hotly tipped to be a kind of hotbed of talent that was coming through. So yeah, we kind of did a lot of local gigs. Also, this is pre-internet. We kind of got our records in all the local indie shops like Piccadilly Records and things like that would have us in the windows, and we kind of got local journalists writing about us, putting us on CDs, on magazines and all things like that. And then at that time, In the City was really at its peak, which was kind of a music conference equivalent to South by Southwest.
Yeah.
But in the Northwest, and it was created by the late Tony Wilson of Factory Records. And basically, at that period of time, the music industry would just move into Manchester. So you'd have every hotel would be booked out.
There's lots of indie bands up around here back then. Like for bands, guitar bands, this is the place to be.
Yeah, back then, yeah. And we were excited at that time. We were excited by what excited us was trying to combine elements of electronic music and indie, because bands like New Order had come before had sort of inspired us, and records by like Kraftwerk and stuff like that.
German
we're listening to a lot, yeah, and just putting those two elements together. So we did In the City, and we got a record deal off the back of that. And back then it was still a period of time where record labels were handing out huge deals to kind of indie bands that they would take a chance on, because the record sales were so high and they were all making so much money in that period of time. So we kind of at the tail end of that, where we got sent into residential studios, like living in the countryside. One had a bloody swimming pool.
Really? Wow.
A private chef. Yeah, it was totally ridiculous. And the second one we went in was at Real World, which was Peter Gabriel's. But to be honest, it took us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And we were young, naive, and whatever money you spend, whichever label you're with, you got to recoup those spends. So, we thought, this is great. This, the high-end studio they're sending us in. This is fantastic. But at the end of the day, if you want to ever make any money other than the advance they give you,
To bring cash in.
You need to recoup all those spends. But anyway, yeah, we probably spent too long in the studio, which I would advise against.
Yeah.
With too many producers, so
you had too much freedom. Did you think you were in a great studio? You thought,
yeah,
labels backing you. You thought to yourself, we have time to be here,
yeah,
do our craft and stuff. In hindsight, actually, you wished you were a bit more. You kept what maybe the focus you had before you were signed.
Absolutely, yeah,
nailed on.
Absolutely. So I think any young artist, is important to maintain that focus on what it is got you that attention in the first place, and keep things simple, keep things keep working in a place that you're comfortable with. Like your own rehearsal room, I think it would have made much more sense for us to record locally or record in our own studio setup. But we ended up working with 3 producers at the same time who were all done amazingly well in separate projects, and that had all kind of got chart success, but just ended up like this overcooked thing, and we were exhausted after spending nearly 2 years in the studio. Our A&R guy left the label. So there was uncertainty there, and we just split up. But it was everything I'd learned there basically that I carried into my band The Whip. So by that time,
the next group.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't mind saying it, but prior to that, I had like a $7,000 tax bill or something like that, because I was just young, naive, and like I say, band split up. I had to pay off this big tax bill from all the money we'd been living off.
So what did you do with that? Did you have to? Did you pay that off with music, or did you have to go?
Well, just went back to actually working. I got a job in a guitar shop, sound control, which was great because I bought loads of old vintage synths before anyone started realising how much money they were worth, and old Japanese Squier guitars and stuff like that. So it was those instruments that I used to kind of really knuckle down and write some new songs, use everything I'd learned from that project, and keep things simple. And that's when I started my band The Whip, and that was about another year to writing in a pub cellar, at which point I thought I'll wait till I've got enough songs that are decent before I start kind of shouting about things. At that point, expanded the band, so we had a live setup. So I kind of did the hard work first, the material, and then we have a live setup, and then to be honest, we just gigged so much to try and get attention. I think I would say that if you're a young band with energy like that, you're driving up and down the M6 every week to different indie nights. It's got to be done. Yeah. Whether it's Glasgow one night and then it might be Brighton the next. It's just got to be done. We did a lot,
isn't it? The fans were at gigs.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's still the same these days, but for us, it probably is. Back then, you kind of got local promoters that have a bit of kudos and a bit of the cool factor, and can attract kind of cool bands in their city. And you've got music fans in each city, journalists in each city that go to those sorts of gigs. So we kind of did that, and then
support slots under.
Well, I think back then, I don't know if it's the same now, but you get kind of a guaranteed crowd at this, because our stuff was quite clubby as well.
Yeah.
So you might do a set in between a couple of DJs. So we kind of bridged the gap between Indian electronic and electro dance. We could do sort of gigs in between DJs, which opened up a lot of doors as well. We were able to do remixes for people, play on kind of dance bills, but we could play on an indie bill as well. And that was kind of our appeal, really, that whole crossover. And there was a real scene for that at the time, which is another bit of advice. Make sure there's the valid scene that you think, oh, we can be part of this. This is really happening, and that's what happened with us with that band. And there were a lot of people writing about us, and it was round about the time then that the internet really took off as a way bands communicate with people. So you had platforms like MySpace that offered you the opportunity to communicate with other artists and collaborate with them. We were put on this hipster French label, Kitsune, which is Daft Punk manager's label, and he put us kind of on his home page. And all of a sudden we were kind of doing singles with them, and we went to Japan for the first time then.
So you got the internet quite early then?
Yeah. So it was MySpace was great for bands around that time, and I think people were extra excited at that initial time, you know, being able to communicate with bands and use it as a way of communicating as an artist and as a musician. So that did really well for us, and then we did all sorts of touring for the next.
So you're in your second
10
at this
years.
point. You've been in the band, your first band.
Yeah.
Done in the studio, done some stuff. You've split up in the studio. That's been there for a long time. You've started
Pretty
a new
much.
group.
Yeah.
The stuff you've learned. You've done the clubs.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
We learned so much, and everything I'd learned was served me well with that band, The Whip, and.
So were you purely just doing at this point when you were in the Whip? Was it purely the only thing you were doing was in that band, or were you still working in a guitar shop at the time? Or?
And there was a period where we'd be gigging early on, and then I'd have to. Sometimes I remember a couple of times I got dropped off at work, like straight to work after doing a gig.
Was that the guitar shop? Was it?
Yeah.
So you were balancing the working in the guitar shop and.
Yeah.
Do you think being in the guitar shop helped you in terms of
I think
being around musicians?
Yeah, defo. Yeah, you know, musicians that we were playing with and people working with would come in the guitar shop as well, defo, and definitely use it as a bit of a networking tool as well. And like I said, it got a couple of bits of decent equipment at cost and stuff like that, which was good. But yeah, at some point we got, you know, a few record deal offers, and rather than go for the major label this time, even though we had an offer, we went with an indie label. We went with Southern Fried Records, which was like Fatboy Slim's label. They were kind of really understood the dance culture elements of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And we made an album that I was really kind of proud of, and we were much more in control of, and it sounded great. It sounded exactly what we were doing and what we were trying to do. X Marks Destination was the first Whip album we did, and got all sorts of kind of sync deals and computer game deals, and kind of we're on adverts and
So
stuff
were you
like
songwriting
that.
in this band as well?
Yeah.
Were you the sole songwriter, or was it shared?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the sole writer of the band.
Yeah. And we just toured for but basically, I didn't have a job till I started at BIM, which was 10 years later, really. So it was lots of fun.
The commercial success of the band The Whip helped you sustain your living in terms of folk.
Definitely, yeah, for 10 years. And I would say, in terms of income streams as an artist, you kind of, you get big income streams from things like festivals, or as a songwriter, you got income streams from royalties, and that could be advances for kind of games. You know, if you're on latest Xbox games or something.
Because you said sync as well, so.
Yeah, so
on
adverts,
games as well,
you'd get advances for adverts and things like that. And then obviously you get royalties that come through with things like PRS as well. And, you know, alongside publishing advances and the record label advances and merchandise sales gigs, I sustained like doing that full time for 10 years during that period.
So you were full on in the band in the music industry then, weren't you?
Yeah, just touring, DJing, playing live. Yeah. Had loads of fun. Went to Japan a bunch of times, like 5 times I think, and
big in Japan.
toured America. I don't know about that. Yeah, we were doing alright for a while. And toured America like 3 times, did all the kind of South by Southwest stuff, and yeah, loads of fun. But yeah, I think that after those 10 years, I'll be honest, we kind of got to a point where having a family and stuff like that, it was difficult to be away. Yeah. And I'd never taught music before, but I got into kind of offered the opportunity to teach at BIM.
So that was offered to you, or did you seek that out?
Well, I knew BIM was opening in Manchester, and the priority for them was to have people at that point teaching that were in the industry. Yeah. And
it's a good feeling, isn't it?
we had I had a bit of teacher training, and then was straight into teaching, and I absolutely loved it. I had no idea that I would like it so much, and it just seemed like this fresh lease of life that I loved. But then, back to your podcasting, kind of thinking about this whole kind of having a few pans, a bit of a portfolio career. Because that's the way I always think of it. It's kind of like you've got a few pans on the burner.
You got the eggs in one, you got the bacon in the other.
Yeah, you don't want that meat spoiling by boiling a bit too hard. So you've got to monitor all those pans that are cooking away. But yeah, so the teaching at that point, I was kind of doing 12 hours or something, and at that point, I was still kind of doing gigs with the Whip here and there when they were offered. We still did quite well in Spain at that point, so there was a few years where we'd do festival gigs at the weekend and things like that, and then I'd come back to teaching and juggling things a little bit, and bits of wedding band stuff for mates I started doing towards the end of that Whip stuff.
So you didn't do any function stuff until then? That's you
nothing. No, I've never done any function
all
stuff.
Original until the last years, and then
yeah. And I only did that for a short time. I found it quite fun.
Yeah.
Got a bit emotional when you'd be doing a wedding band thing. I wasn't prepared for it.
It's heavy, isn't it?
Like, hang on, we're at a wedding here, guys.
I know, yeah.
This is serious.
But you get the buffet as well.
Oh yeah, the buffet. But yeah, wedding band stuff. Yeah, I would say the best thing you can be is open-minded. About having a portfolio career, and I would say at that point, I focused more on my teaching. I saw opportunities in the kind of teaching management, which was fantastic for me because by that point I got 2 kids, a bit more job security.
Well, did it make it more attractive for you saying that you come here at this time? Because we know as giggy musicians, you get to a venue, they want you there for forward sound check. You don't leave until 12 or 1 when everything's packed away and gone. Did it make it more attractive for you being told you come here at now and you leave at 3 and you don't have to bring a load of gear with you? You know what I mean? Just rock.
Yeah. And, having that bit of stability in my life was definitely what I've needed in my late years or whatever, most recent years. But still find time to kind of work on passion project type music projects and stuff like that. But without the kind of pressure of having it to be the one thing that brings home.
Yeah.
But like the drive I had as a young lad or whatever, it was like I had to work so hard to get the record deal or to get the band up and running. It was a lot of work, and I was so driven, particularly to do the Whip stuff with what I'd learned and what I'd seen not work. Yeah. I was so motivated at that period, and I think you've got to be to get anywhere in the industry. Just relentless kind of effort online with writing, with kind of listening to music and just immersing yourself in the scene as well. I think a lot of it is networking as well. Obviously I took more of the teaching gig, but I've seen friends of mine that are kind of my age succeed as like session musicians. Yeah. I know you've done some session work yourself, which is fantastic, but I think the ones that have done the best, and not necessarily best musicians, they're all great musicians, but it's not like I can sweep pick while I'm sat in the toilet.
It's a person thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's being social. I wouldn't say a social chameleon, but reading a room and being able to fit in with a certain group of people. Being an adaptable musician as well.
Huge skill set in the music industry, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is. Like I've got friends who are musicians. If you're talking, you'd be mid conversation. Someone important or an artist comes in the room, they'd be over chatting. They'd be over there chiseling, chatting.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Putting on the big, a good positive impression, which is good, and it helps projects I've been in when being with people like that. And but yeah, I think it varies. When you're working with people as a session musician, it varies case to case. It's like, do they have a sense of humour? Do you buy into that? Do you take more of an unassuming role? I've seen other session musicians that are just, the quiet type. That might just get on with it, like the keyboardist. I know who, not the most vocal when you see the people he's working with. Then other people that are kind of all the bravado and part of it. It depends case by case and artist by artist, but certainly there's.
Did you ever do any session playing?
No. I've done collaborations, kind of like vocal tracks with dance acts and stuff like that. We did. I tell a lie. We did do some collaboration with a project which Jack Daniels gave us some money for.
The whiskey. Right.
The whiskey, the whiskey. Yeah. And we did. It was Mike Joyce, the drummer of the Smiths, created a lineup where we all collaborated doing Buzzcock songs. So it was with like Twisted Wheel, and then Tim Burgess from the Charlatans, I think Paul Heaton was doing that as well. There were a few artists, and basically we were all doing Buzzcocks covers with Mike Joyce playing drums. That was fun. But yeah, you get a lot of those brands once you, especially if you know a young artist. Once you get to a certain level, there's a lot of those brands that they have tax deductible money that they want to give you. You know, I mentioned Jack Daniels, but you know, there's other stuff we did. You know, like for Adidas or Levi's, and
Well, as a writer as well, that helps you sustain your living because you get the money for the
exactly.
sales.
So yeah, a lot of that, you know, alongside some of the other things I mentioned, once you get to that level, you know, you get gig offers or certain offers from brands where perhaps inflated fees are keeping their tax money down. You know what I mean?
This is better off going to someone, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but yeah, so you know, I think as a portfolio musician, you just got to be open-minded, work incredibly hard, excellent at networking. Any job in the industry, that you know, that's all true as well.
So you started off then, by the sound of things, you started off as quite similar to me in some circumstances where you started off in your band with your young friends and stuff. You know, you thought you had something. You give it a go. You went to the studio. You got signed. You know, maybe got a bit of complacency. The band split off. You started this new band with all the experience that you had, and you got a lot further with that, and you did some really cool stuff. But then you got to a point in your life where, you know, which I think most people do, where the sort of the nightlife and the heaviness of being out and away.
Yeah, the late nights.
It takes its toll, doesn't it, Bruce? It takes its toll.
Yeah.
So, and now you're doing something where you can still dip into the other things that you did before with the band and the commercial songwriting, but you can also do the teaching thing to help. So, you know, you can help sustain your living, which is it's a good little trajectory, isn't it, when you think about it?
It is, man. Yeah.
Because you've experienced. I mean, like, we talk about portfolio careers. You've done sync writing, so you've done that. You've done band. You know, you've done function band, which is another kind of band, original band. You've done teaching the industry as well. You've done the commercial stuff. It's like lots of different things you've done.
Yeah. Bit of this and that. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about as a musician. And what did someone say once? Like keeping the wolf from the door or something.
Yeah, it's true. Because most people, the reason I chose this project to do is because most musicians that I spoke to, I realised when you first come to the uni, you first meet when you think, oh, he's a teacher. That's that. You know what I mean? Like a high school teacher, you think, oh, they're in band, that's that. But you realise that actually they do so many other little things. Like a lot of people do teaching as well, for example. Like they teach but private lessons, obviously.
Yeah.
The lessons, they do one-to-one tuition and stuff like that. Online lessons and all that stuff. Like lots of people do stuff like that. So it's been interesting to speak to you, Bruce, and to learn a bit more about yourself.
Been fun, mate. Yeah, it's been a cathartic experience.
Our first guest, Bruce. You want to check out the Whip on Spotify? I'm sure there might have some tunes out there somewhere. But yeah, this is the first guest, Mr. Bruce Carter, discussing portfolio careers in the music industry. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Cheers.